In a homebrewed RPG campaign, the GM completely disregards my character's backstory, manipulates my choices and renders me helpless. I'm a player in a tabletop RPG campaign and I just wanted to vent about this session. The GM uses a rules-light homebrew system and it's his homebrew world as well. He's been doing this campaign for years now, but I just joined through a mutual friend after another player left recently. When I joined the campaign, the GM had told me he wanted me to be from a particular country as a prince, and since it was his homebrewed world, I went with it. The country I'm a prince of is a massive empire that has conquered many lands. I wanted to be a morally good character, so I made up a backstory where my prince had a secret romance with a commoner, so it gave me more empathy and understanding than my other royal peers would have. Then in session 1, he had the commoner immediately break up with me since the players were all leaving the city. Session 1. Several sessions later, there is a carnival being hosted in the empire and all the players are attending. The players split up and my part began with my character watching as a mentally handicapped child was put in the dunk tank and was being dunked against his will. So I had my character help the child and stop the game. This isn't relevant to the larger story, but I thought it was really weird. Then I am told I have to go to the main stage, which is just a strip club seemingly. And of course, walking around topless serving drinks is my character's commoner love interest that I made in session 0. The GM laughs a bit and comments, "Isn't it funny? Look at what your ex has to do without you." I have my character give her the shirt off his back and we go to the outskirts of the carnival to find a quiet place to talk, but then the carnival was ambushed by some enemies as arrows and fire rained down on the parade. Suddenly, my character and his ex are teleported back to the main stage and the GM star TS jumping back and forth between all the player characters asking what we want to do without any sort of initiative, and if we don't respond quickly enough he skips to another player. I ask, "What direction are the arrows coming from?" GM, "You can't tell." "Which direction to the palace?" I ask. "You don't know," he tells me. I'm honestly genuinely confused about what to do here and my mind goes blank, but then the GM has my bodyguard, a Brienne of Tarth type, tell me to follow her, so I do. As he cuts back and forth, another player loses his mom in the chaos. I tell GM, I want to help him find his mom. "You can't see him," GM tells me. Then I ended up surrounded by 12 ambushers in the pleasure gardens. GM asked what I would do. I say since the carnival is burning, I look for a piece of wood on fire, and since it's the pleasure gardens maybe there's some oil I can spill and light on fire to separate myself, my bodyguard, and ex who are all with me from the ambushers. He tells me there's no oil and then I'm held down by the men. I tried to escape, but he says I failed. He just did a dice roll behind a screen and didn't tell me the results. I am then hogtied by the ambushers with my bodyguard and ex and thrown in a cart. Meanwhile, the other 2 players have stolen a cart and are escaping. I try to do a goofy wave as my character is tied up towards my companions and he just says, "The carts never pass each other so the other players don't see you." Before the session ends he tells me my bodyguard is dead. After the session, I think my body language showed I was a bit bummed. So GM pipes in, "You want to know why you failed that encounter?" He proceeded to tell me it was because I followed my bodyguard and there was no way a woman could have protected me and I needed to make the choice instead. Some of the other players chimed in and said it was surprising my bodyguard failed since in the lore she was a 20-year veteran who survived the Great War. The GM keeps defending his choice. Then he started making self-deprecating jokes about how he just sucks then and he's the worst GM ever until the other players all reassure him it's fine. I kind of just sat there shell-shocked. His system reduces dice rolls to a rarity and he does them all himself as a way to keep tension. I'm honestly more about hanging out with my friends than judging the quality of any campaign or system, but this was my first combat of any sort in the campaign and I just felt so helpless in this system and it was frustrating. Plus there are no insight or persuasion rolls, just what the GM claims my character would know and how his NPCs would act. So I'm not sure how I was supposed to handle this encounter. Being a GM myself, I thought he was using my bodyguard character to get me back on track, but I thought wrong. I honestly wouldn't have minded if he was just railroading me for a plot point, but him trying to manipulate me and saying his hands were tied when he essentially locked me out of interacting with the other players for the rest of the session is what bothers me the most. Update 1: One of my friends in the group reached out to me and asked me to not leave the group. He told me there were only 2 sessions left and asked me to stick around as a favor to him. I told him I'd reach out to GM and see if we could get on the same page. So I texted the GM and told him I wanted to talk because I had some concerns after the way everything went down last session. He was down and we talked on the phone a couple of days later. To my surprise, the first thing he did was profusely apologize. I hadn't been responding in our group chat, partly because I was mad and partly because my partner had a death in her family. I guess me not responding caused him to dwell on the last session a bunch. He said he was going to retcon my bodyguard's death and keep her alive. I even told him that the treatment of women in the campaign was bad and that it was making the story worse. He told me that it is something that he can work on being better about too. I was surprised, but all this gave me a lot of optimism for this conversation. I was honest and I told him that his homebrew system is very difficult for me since I don't have a character sheet. So my character doesn't have abilities, he doesn't level up, and I can't do things like roll investigate or perception rolls, which makes it hard for me to make informed decisions. I told him it makes me very risk adverse because I don't have things like HP to even know if I'm in danger. He responded to this by telling me I shouldn't worry about that because his GM style rewards me if I roleplay well enough. He went on to say he hates systems with things like perception rolls because that's not how real life works. I also lamented the fact that I also don't get to interact with the other players much. I didn't mention this in my first post, but he plays with all of us in a Discord call, but he only plays with us one at a time, and the two of us who aren't playing are expected to listen and record notable quotes for his notes. He'll switch between characters where each player gets 2 to 3 scenes in a 3-hour session. He has our characters all spread out across the country Game of Thrones style, and I've only gotten to play with another player in 2 sessions so far. This was also why that carnival scene was so frustrating, because all 3 players were finally in the same place and we were trying to find each other and he just kept saying, "You don't see them." He told me that he doesn't do party-based adventures because you can't get character growth that way. I pushed back and said I've seen awesome character growth in traditional D&D style games in the past, it just depends on the group. I also said he's just making things harder for himself by trying to run 3 campaigns instead of 1. And if we don't have character sheets and aren't in a party, then this is all more dramatic improv than a tabletop RPG. He responded by saying his way is better because it creates a real story and that I should be happy because he made me the main character. I guess that is what me being the prince means? He then went on a rant about how much he loves the game world he created and he's very grateful that our characters brought it to life. But then he says that since it's his world, he feels like he owns our characters now, and that after the campaign he wants us all to sign off on him using the characters to write books and a screenplay. And if we don't, he'll just change their names and do it anyway. He then thanks me and tells me that this campaign is the main thing that has been stopping him from self-harm and going to dark places. Then he says he has to go and he rushes to hang up before I can say anything else. I'm dumbfounded after that rapid-fire series of bombshells. I've known since the first few sessions that this was barely a TTRPG, but I got to hang out with my friends so I didn't care what it was. It was nice to hang out with old friends a couple times each month. Then the story got weird, and there was so much misogyny, and then I had the horrible session that caused my original post. Then in this conversation, he throws up even more red flags that I'm not blind to, but he is also planting a seed that he may harm himself without the campaign, which is not something I want on my conscience. I'm just exhausted at this point. Update 2: It all started when I decided to start DMing to keep in touch with some college friends after graduation. During my first campaign, one of the players, Pirate, asked if his friend, Colorado, could join. I didn't really know Colorado, but I figured, the more, the merrier. Colorado had some issues early on, giving unsolicited advice to everyone on how to play and viewing newer or shy players as side characters. However, he frequently missed sessions, only showing up for less than half of them for the first few years, so nothing came to a head early on. Then, Colorado decided he wanted to bring back his tabletop campaign from his college days and started trying to recruit players after my sessions. Pirate suggested I join the campaign, promising that Colorado was a better DM than player. Since I had been the forever DM up to that point, I agreed to give it a go. I created a character who was part of the royal family but enjoyed interacting with commoners in the slums, even having a secret girlfriend from that background. After that, Colorado also started hitting me up to help with the campaign. I ended up photoshopping character art for a bunch of his NPCs, and I even drew his world map for him. I didn't mind doing it, as I do that kind of stuff for fun. For our first session, Colorado had already created character sheets for us based on our backstories, but only he could see them. Colorado would also roll all the dice himself, so all we had to focus on is role-playing. We played one-on-one in different scenes that could last around 30 minutes to an hour each. We usually had around 2 to 4 scenes per session, depending on what Colorado thought was important. During the game, Colorado asked us to write down quotes from him and the other players when it wasn't our turn. I had to wait for well over an hour before I could finally play. My first session was on rails. I mostly just had to repeat after Colorado during a ceremony. Afterwards, I got to sneak out of the castle and meet with my commoner girlfriend, but Colorado immediately had her break up with me. Then I was told that I had to leave the city. I was essentially locked out of my hanging out in the slums and commoner girlfriend subplots. NPCs generally disliked my morally good character, especially my sister, who was depicted as purely evil towards me. Despite my efforts to mend the relationship, she never changed her mind and Colorado never rolled any dice to determine that. Later, Colorado revealed to me the character was Boss Ed on his ex-girlfriend, who was originally intended to be the player character from my country before they broke up. Eventually, I finally got to interact with another player, Soldier, who I had really good chemistry with, and we had a really fun scene. Which Colorado exclaimed, "See? This is why I keep you apart. It makes these moments so much more epic." But I'm just thinking that if we were in a party, every session could be this epic. Then Colorado got busy. He went to some alternative medicine nature retreat and didn't pay his rent the whole time he was gone, so he got evicted. At that point, the campaign went on hiatus as people got busy and Colorado was couch hopping. It was during that time I considered the campaign over and made my first post because I thought it fit the sub. Then a year after the last session, Colorado started trying to organize the group to do 3 more sessions to finish the campaign. I just ghosted the group chat for a while, but Pirate's roommate is a player in the campaign I DM, so Pirate started hopping on the call asking me to come back for the finale. Pirate told me that it would be different this time because all of our characters were going to meet up for the finale and he really wanted to play with me. I naively agreed to give the game a second chance. The first of those 3 sessions led to this post. In this follow-up, Colorado decided to have a single super finale session, which I reluctantly attended because of sunk cost fallacy. I was imprisoned, beaten and whipped, separated from my girlfriend and recently resurrected bodyguard. A Deus Ex ninja offered to help me escape, but I wanted to save all the prisoners. So I helped the commoners escape with the ninja before saving my girlfriend. My bodyguard got captured, but I made sure my girlfriend escaped and then I went to save my bodyguard because I wasn't letting her die after she just got resurrected. I tried to find my bodyguard but every door was locked and I was forced into a long one-on-one fight with a guard that would make John Carpenter blush. I lost the fight due to an unknown -2 modifier on my fighting rolls, leading to my re-imprisonment. Pirate tried to board a boat to reach my location, but was unsuccessful. Colorado informed him that the sailors refused to let him on the ship because they didn't like his tone. Fortunately, Soldier saved me and we agreed to stop the big bad and rescue my bodyguard together. With a squad of Soldier's peers, we pursued the big bad into the woods. Without any rolls, all the other soldiers were sniped by archers. Finally, the 2 of us reached the clearing where the big bad and his followers were. We were outnumbered about 30-2. My bodyguard and the other commoners were tied to a tree. Soldier was the same race as the villain, so he approached while I stayed hidden. He delivered an awesome passionate speech against the big bad's actions, saying that it wasn't what their ancestors would want. I'm sitting there waiting and hoping for a persuasion roll. And nothing. Colorado says the big bad doesn't change his mind and he sets the tree on fire, causing my bodyguard and the commoners to burn to death. Soldier and I retreated into the woods to end the campaign. Pirate was supposed to have a scene after us, but he fell asleep because it was past 1 a.m. Colorado kept trying to call Pirate on the phone. I joke, "Hey, we're old now, being up past midnight isn't as easy as it used to." To which Colorado replies, "I just thought Pirate had more respect for me than this." The Discord call becomes quiet and after Colorado starts focusing on Soldier and I. He wants to know why we're not discussing the ending more. I remark that it was a bit of a downer and I'm tired. Then Colorado starts spiraling, saying that RPGs are just another medium that he failed at, just like film and music. He starts crying and hangs up from the Discord call. Soldier and I stayed on and had a short that was awkward conversation. I don't know Soldier well, so I didn't say much about my grievances with the campaign and eventually we ended up just talking about Baldur's Gate 3 for an hour. The next day, I wake up to a barrage of texts from Colorado apologizing, mansplaining how hard it is to be a DM as if I've never done it myself. He then starts sending me messages with all his ideas for my character in the next season and how he promises I'll have more freedom next time. I wouldn't understand, but he needed to do the prison sequence and my bodyguard to die for my character growth, but next season will be different. I tell him I'm not doing another season. Colorado replies saying that he thought I'd say that because Pirate, who was apparently not sleeping, told him Soldier and I were bitching about the campaign after the session. Colorado said that once I get over it, we can start talking about season 3. I reaffirmed my stance. Then Colorado texts me one last time and asks if I'll still make his maps and character art even if I don't play. I said no again. It's been 2 months since I last heard from Colorado or Pirate. We used to play games and talk about pro wrestling all the time, but now there's been no contact. A lot of the comments on my posts helped me realize I was prioritizing Colorado's mental health over my own, and I felt like it was my responsibility to support his campaign because he constantly referenced how important it was to his mental health. Intentional or not, he preyed upon my empathy. I'm not his giving tree and I shouldn't be left a stump for a campaign where he doesn't even want us to affect the world. I sometimes worry Pirate is going through a similar situation to me, but for a longer period of time. Pirate introduced me to Colorado, and he's really loyal to him. I think that slowed down my exit from the group because I trusted Pirate to be my friend as well. I remember opening up to Pirate about a panic attack I had while Colorado was spiraling one day, and he just shrugged it off as me being dramatic. It's frustrating. I want both of them to be happy, but I can't make that happen for them, especially if it comes at the expense of my own well-being. I ended up venting to some of my Earl friends and they really supported and listened to me, which is why I didn't feel a need to vent here. I learned a lot about what not to do when DMing from this campaign, and it made me reevaluate my approach to playing RPGs. Now I'm in a group with my Earl friends and it's a blast. I can relax and just have fun playing again.